The end of the slavery, or just an obligatory law? Slave life after and before the 13th Amendment. It is no secret that blacks did not have a good life in the USA back in the past. During the Industrial Revolution, there were much hard work to do, like building up rails for the new trains which were necessary for the upcoming economy, and they had to do this under very bad conditions. The punishments were cruel, even for the smallest delinquency, like 20 hits with a whip if they worked less or took something to eat. They were seen as a belonging of the owner, so the owners could do everything they want. After the Civil War, which ended in 1865, the situation was supposed to change with the 13th Amendment, which should abolish the slavery once and for all. But was a simple law able to change circumstances which have been generated themselves in the course of the last 300 years? Although many African American slaves did not thought about their possibilities or their situation in life, some slaves or freed black activists realized that their biggest chance for improving the situation was to draw attention of the public masses, to give the general public an impression of the conditions the slaves had had to endure. They described their life as a big misery under the white Christian majority who just saw them as an organism created by God to be underneath all other humans and work as slaves for the white plantation owners. Many blacks believed in the Christian God, like the white Americans, and waited for the God of justice to arrive, bringing destruction to the owners. At the same time, they appealed Christian values like charity, which are in conflict with the concept of slavery. After they had been freed, they did not see an end of their misery, because even if a slave was free on paper, it would have been almost impossible to get a job except cleaning shoes or working as a stable hand. That is also why they perceived their situation worse than the situation of slaves of any other society, and compared themselves with the history of the Israelites in Egypt in the Bible. In the rare case of owning goods, former slaves had a hard time defend their property, simply because there was no persecution of the culprits if it came to blacks. Of course, it was not possible to become well educated or develop special talents, because the only schools for black children were run by private persons and they were very rare. This means the chances of getting a school education were low as well. There were several authors who see the white man at the source of all these problems and degradation, and as long as the white man held the power, their only chance of improvement was to spread papers written by them and concentrate their support on rare organizations like the AME Church. After the papers and speeches from more and more black activists like Francis Allen Watkins Harper or David Walker, and books like Uncle Tom's Cabin had begun to influence the daily life of the white Americans, they had no other choice than to deal with that topic, resulting in the fact that people started to doubt the concept of slavery. In a country where the power lied in the hands of the white majority, it was not common to encounter blacks on a daily basis. Therefore, it was impossible for blacks to get a good job or even in a high office. Some white Americans were so convinced by the concept of slavery, even after its official abolition, that they invented an own branch of pathology to justify the slavery in a scientific way. The American physician Samuel Cartwright came up with this theory about black people and their diseases, which claimed the Afro-Americans being an inferior race to all others and their destiny, given by God, should be the work as a slave due to the fact that Afro-Americans could endure greater suffering. This endurance of suffering was the reason why Cartwright thought why it is impossible for slaveholders to mistreat their slaves. According to Cartwright, the only danger was too much liberty, because it might cause the disease drapetomania, which means the slave runs away. This fascination concerning the Afro-Americans as another species also causes the emergence of minstrel groups. Those minstrels were mostly short musicals, played with instruments like a banjo or violin, where white entertainers painted their face black and wore masks showing a stereotypical African American, trying to imitate the dances and songs of African American slaves. These blackface characters were often shown in a romanticized way. They were shown as gentle, happy, and simple slaves who liked their work on a farm instead of going into the big world and leaving his owner. This picture of African American life and culture calms the conscience of all the people, especially the ones in the northern states, who attacked the southern plantation owners because of the cruelties towards the slaves. At the same time, it keeps the African Americans still at a distance from the rest of the people, so they did not have to deal with these problems directly, accepting the false image of slave life. Another reason for the dragging process of including blacks in the society were the economical interests, because many people were afraid to lose their prosperous life in the case that African Americans were granted a new position in society. Accepting the false but nice imagination of slave life the minstrels gave to the audience was easier, and this resulted in two contradictory views: the economical interests and the social compassion. Because of the painted face or the masks the entertainers wore on the minstrel stages, they could behave differently. Now they were able to criticize the government and talking politically uncivilized without fearing any consequences because nobody recognized the entertainers. Almost each character in the minstrel shows were different, because the entertainers asked the slaveholders for information about the slaves to prepare their role of a slave in their show. Many slaveholders saw their slaves differently, from a thing without feelings to a complicated organism which the owners would never understand. According to this, the characters in the minstrels behaved very differently. But in the development of the minstrels during the 19th century, a few characters became very famous. The first one was invented by Thomas Rice early in the 1830s, named Jim Crow, a Southern slave who was very simple-minded, untutored, and stupid. But without realizing it, he was traveling through the country making fun of politics, having no idea that he is the one be laughed at. The second one was Zip Coon, who was as urban and stylish as Jim Crow was untutored. He was very boastful and wearing fancy clothes. He was romantic, but at the same time wrapped up in himself, resulting in the loss of his credibility and attraction. Those characters also talked about forbidden topics on stage, for example sexuality, and all this forbidden and uncivilized behavior in combination with the provocative personalities caused a new distance between the blacks and the whites. Due to the fact that the people did not meet many African Americans in daily life, and actually believed the picture of blacks conveyed by minstrels as the reality of the African American life and culture, more prejudices were created, and the process of including blacks into the society was slowed down.